So welcome everyone to our Food for Thought speaker series. We're honored to have our guest Sunny Zhu with us today. He's going to be discussing U.S.-China relations in the Biden-Xi era. As always, we're glad to have all of you join us remotely. And if you have any questions, please keep them to the end. And as always, keep yourself on mute unless you're asking a question. The session will be recorded and we'll have it up on our Food for Thought lecture series page. And we're glad to have our honored guests with us and all of you joining us. So now I'll hand it off to Bill to do the intro. Thanks, Bill.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Jeremy and Valerie, for keeping our sessions going. Here we are approaching our mid-second year of these weekly talks, and they keep getting better and better, and very grateful to those of you who've been on many of them. This is a real wonderful way for our community to educate each other and share ideas and thoughts on important issues of the day. And we're going to keep this going for as long as I'm still standing. I don't know how long that'll be, but hopefully a few more years anyway. We're very honored and pleased to have Sunny with us here today. He is very much a long-standing member of the SIPA community. He has his PhD in political science from Columbia University, and he's been a visiting scholar. He's co-director, but I'm the co, so he's really the director of the China Initiative at SIPA. We have an annual conference with Beida, with Peking University, and we have had partnerships, thanks to Sunny, not just with Beida, but with Tsinghua as well, both of which where he's served as a faculty member. He's also taught at Fudan and Ramapo College here in New Jersey. He's a very well-respected author and editor, more than 20 books on comparative politics. He's really one of the world's experts in U.S.-China relations. He is also a rather significant media personality in China, commentating on U.S.-China relations for a number of years. And he's just a great friend. He's also, as his own business presence, he's an independent director of Citigroup China and also of MGM, the large entertainment company. So we're so honored by his presence, number one, but also put in the context of it's after midnight in Beijing where he is. So this is service beyond the call of duty. So Sunny, thank you so much for being with us. And he'll be focusing today on U.S.-China relations in the current moment with our new president and their long-standing president. So, Doctor, thank you so much, and I'll turn the session over to you. Everybody, there'll be an opportunity for Q&A at the end. So, in the interim, please, everybody, mute your microphones.
Thank you, Bill. It's great pleasure to be here today. And Bill, you raised me up. I feel very good. And great honor. I would like to share with you some of my observations on this sweet and sour relationship between the United States and China. You all have my papers, I think, because I posted online. So I'll try to make it short and leave more time for discussion. One of my favorite movies, American movies, played by Clint Eastwood, is The Good and Bad and Ugly. I think President Biden borrowed that metaphor. He defines the U.S.-China relations as a fight between the good and bad, democracy and autocracy. So he calls for rebuilding the United States as a role model for democracy to defeat China. So the ugly fact is sometimes the United States policy towards China has to be very practical. So American China policy, as Secretary Blinken said today, is more like a cocktail with 3 layers of pragmatic elements, competition, collaboration, and confrontation, if you call. So I'll try to be short. I make three major points. Point number one is I'll say something about democracy because it's a big topic, much relevance, the debate on democracy in the US-China relations. The concept of democracy was actually introduced by a Colombian professor, Dr. John Dewey. It's about around 100 years ago. He visited China in 1919 because he has a couple of very well-known students who got their PhD from Columbia University. Dr. Hu Shi, who participated in the May 4th movement in around 1918, 1919. So they invited Dr. Dewey to come to China, and he stayed here for 2 years and gave about almost 200 lectures to Chinese audiences. So he was hailed as second Confucius in China because he wrote extensively on democracy. So a lot of Chinese people call him, actually see him as a Mr. Democracy and Mr. Science, the two personification of modern Western value. So Dr. Dewey argued that complete democracy can only be obtained, if you read his books, by extending voting rights, but also by ensuring the existence of fully formed public opinion and accomplished by communications among citizens, among experts and politicians, with the later politicians must be accountable for the policy they adopt. So it's interesting to see that maybe in response to President Biden's remarks on democracy, Chinese President Xi Jinping also stressed that democracy is not a special right reserved to an individual country, but a right for the people of all countries to enjoy. So it's very interesting. He even put forward a new concept called the whole process democracy, 全过程的民主. I myself, as a political scientist, I need to study this new concept, whole process democracy, which emphasize the role of the people. So I think in China, you see a lot of good, beautiful slogans serving the people, and it's absolutely right. So these concept of whole process democracy emphasize people are masters of the country. So the government officials need to be loyal, need to be clean. So I think that's good. So my general arguments here on democracy, I think we can see democracy either as a skyscraper or as a cloud. Skyscraper building is easily recognizable, but a cloud changes shapes all the time. So when COVID-19, we're still in the situation, the pandemic is still running in the world. Democracy in a sense, I think these two concepts, the Chinese people are so familiar with, these two concepts should be regarded as a goal for good governance, as a measurement for global development. So we all, in each of these countries, United States and China, we all have different problems. As for the United States, I think a lot of people, they are proud of democratic values. They really enjoy the freedom, but a lot of people worry about the quality of democracy. To use Fukuyama's terms, they worry about political decay or institutional failure of the political system. The two parties in the United States have to work together to make democracy work in a more efficient way if you want to win the battle. We see political polarizations, we see the racial tensions, social economic inequalities in New York, and all these problems must be fixed. And also on American foreign policy, I think I should give up this kind of a practice, shoot first and ask question later. especially after the Iraq War. I heard American scholar says the United States becoming a country everyone loves to hate. So this is, I think this is for American problem. But to be very fair, so if the problems in the United States is about the quality of democracy, in China, I think people more worry about whether democracy can be truly made in China. So in the name of to maintain the political stability, China has constructed information firewall, tightened domestic ideological control, this kind of thing. So China rejects three basic elements of Western democracy, which I see. These three elements they are constitutional rights. On Constitution, if you guarantee certain rights of freedom, you have to let people enjoy it. Fair and free elections, and also meaningful participation. So in that sense, I think doesn't matter what Chinese government call itself, socialist democracy with Chinese characteristics, I think it failed to be recognized by the international community. So that's my first point. The second point, I will introduce the current, the relationship, the status quo. What happened in the President Biden Xi time? A fundamental change in U.S.-China relation today, I think, can be seen in four perspectives. First, I see from extensive cooperations, people-to-people exchange, now I see a sharp shrink. Because let me give you an example. We used to have over 300 flights a week. And also maybe around 5 million people go back and forth between our two countries. But now only probably 20 plus flight a week. So if you want to fly from New York to China, it's only one flight of China Eastern every week, maybe right now two. But tickets are very expensive. So people, and especially I think Chinese government is not encouraging its people to go abroad. If you come back from abroad, you have to spend at least 14 days in quarantine. So I spent 14 days plus another 7 to be in some area, not in Beijing. You know, you have to wait another 7 days to be qualified to go back to Beijing. So that's really amazing. People complain, but people understand. And the second change, I think, lacking of substantial cooperation right now, even in a symbolic sense. Back to around 10 years ago, under the, I think in President Obama's time, China and the United States signed 2 agreements on climate change. You see this, if you study the content, really substantial because I think the 2 governments promised to raise $15 million to set up 2 research centers. One is on carbon technology, another is on climate change, something like coal. So on electronic cars. So today we don't see this kind of agreements. Chinese leaders didn't attend didn't go to Europe for the climate change summit. So even at the symbolic level, I think we don't see any substantial agreements or cooperation projects. The third change over the last 2 years, instead we see intensified competition in every field, in diplomatic field, Asian countries in Southeast China, East China Sea, on Diaoyu, Senkaku Island, on South China Sea, also economic competition. Huawei is competing with iPhone, so this competition intensified. The last dimension, which I see, is extended confrontation, ranging from the arguments over sovereignty issues, human rights issues in Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and also cybersecurity issues. All these problems existed. And before I came back to China, so I went to see my food doctor, and the first question, he didn't check my food. He asked me question on Hong Kong, on Xinjiang. So it's really, I think these people see this confrontation between the two countries. So I think China and the United States this year have already had several rounds of talks, beginning in March in Alaska, and later in July, one of the undersecretary came to Tianjin, and also Blinken met Chinese foreign minister, and also President Biden called President Xi Jinping in late September. But still, I think it's very difficult to get the relation back to its normal track. I'll give you an example. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, people began to talk about whether China use force Taiwan. So people worry about the cross-strait relationship because one of the reasons people worry about it, because from American side, President Biden attended a town hall meeting and promised to protect Taiwan from mainland. So when pressed by a CNN host, gave a quick yes, then yes again. But still, people worry whether the United States send troops or just sell arms. So from China's perspective, China's response is to send more serious messages, more air fighters, and it's really caused a lot of Taiwanese worry about it. I don't think mainland China is ready to attack, ready for to unify Taiwan. But still, we worry about, quite nervous about the unexpected incidents. And there are several explanations on the change of the nature of the relationship. From the most popular one in the West, I think you are familiar, is that China has become more conservative, become more aggressive. China has approached the United States from a perceived position of strength. China is cheating the United States. China is giving up Deng Xiaoping's policy to be low profile. And what I see is the new Chinese leadership, not new, for almost 10 years. The Chinese leaders possesses both domestic aspirations and global big power consciousness. Whether the rise of China is a fantasy or fallacy, I think China has already become a stronger force that has contributed on the one hand, but on the other hand, destabilized the status quo of the current international order. For example, I studied Chinese foreign policy. I think the expansion of China's diplomatic frontier, including ranging from emphasizing economic and commercial diplomacy to cybersecurity, to polar exploration, to space competition, and so on. And also, some people argue there's a great leap forward modernization efforts of defense and military forces here in China, called 强军固防 and 以武止革. And all these, China spend a lot of money on defense budget. All this has caused serious international concerns. Another reason which is more popular in China is that the United States cannot compete effectively with China. due to American decline in economic vitality, technological innovation, political unity, and some kind of losing diplomatic credibility. So these arguments suggest, in my mind, to some extent, that the United States has lost some of this institutional attractiveness to Chinese over the last 2 decades, because historically, a lot of Chinese people see the United States as a beautiful country and an imperialist empire called Meidi. In the late 70s and early 80s, China even viewed the United States as a role model for economic modernization. In 1989, some of the demonstrators at Tiananmen Square put up a Statue of Liberty to symbolize the Chinese pursuit of democracy. That's the dream. But however, after the Iraq War and probably after the 2008 financial crisis, and maybe also plus the withdrawal from Afghanistan, some Chinese people gradually see the change. They gradually change their attitudes towards the United States. I think Chinese public opinion, at least when I come back, I feel have one dominant theme that China has defeated the United States in 3 battle areas: in controlling the COVID-19 crisis, and also in the recent trade war, because it's expected that this year we probably have over 500 billion US dollars trade volumes, and also in defending the national sovereignty related to Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Taiwan. So they call this 3 battle areas. China already won. So this is a really, to me, I feel surprised. I try to understand the logic behind this thinking. People do complain about the locked up of the city. They do complain, but they're more complaining about the American behavior. So I try to summarize. I think there are strategic debates in China right now, with some advocating a much harder line towards the United States, but mostly some of them calling scholars, reasonable scholars, rational scholars, they call for the continuing policy of 避而不反, 斗而不破 means you can criticize the United States, but don't break up the relationship. So I summarized and classified 4 perspectives of views, current views on how Chinese people see the US-China relations today. The key words reflecting these 4 views are decoupling, futility, decisive battle, and cooperation. So in Chinese, this means 脱钩论, 无用论, 决战论, 合作观. The decoupling school is quite pessimistic on the relationship. They argue that due to domestic constraints, the 2 countries will inevitably grow apart, at least in the area of science and technology, because the United States set up more, settings to sell these high advanced technology to China. The futility school believes that the United States is determined to contain China, or at least try to diminish the Chinese influence and power. So no politician in Washington, D.C. would ever like to admit that one day the United States may be replaced by China and becoming the second most powerful country in the world. And the 3rd school, what I call the decisive battle school, they emphasize the confrontational nature between the 2 countries, which might lead to one of the scholars called the fight of the century. So therefore, the logic behind is China must prepare itself well for the coming deal. The last school, the cooperation school, still see the hope in bilateral relationship. As Chinese new ambassador Qin Gang repeated, the two countries are entering a new round of mutual exploration, understanding, and adaptation. So we must find a way to get along with each other, to live with each other. He believes that the door of China-US relations, which is already open, cannot be closed. I think despite all these debates, I feel the current relationship in China, current leadership in China is still, I think, adopting a very pragmatic approach in handling its relationship with the United States. They don't want to break up the relationship with China. And so in my paper, I gave a short story. I don't want to repeat it. I think the tradition is, if you study history, Deng Xiaoping, for example, has a famous saying that those countries that follow the United States, they all got rich. So in December, I think December 15th, he decided to set up a establish diplomatic relationship with United States. People actually at that time criticized him. So he used what I said, those countries that follow the United States all got rich, used that logic, trying to persuade his colleagues. And 3 days later, the new open door policy is intertwined with the domestic reform. So that's I think Deng Xiaoping is very rational. I made a rational choice. Xi Jinping, some people say he is also a rational leader. One time he said, we have 1,000 reasons to make the China-US relationship work, no reason to break it. So I think he has a genuine intention to maintain a good relationship with the United States. But the challenge is, I think we have a lot of difficulties. Very hard for him to maintain a good relationship. My third point, I made some proposals trying to see how can we manage the relationship. I think the point I want to make is China is searching its soul. I think China is shaping the world by changing itself. So the United States-China relations should be characterized by decency, by mutual understanding, and by pragmatic problem solving. So in September, the two presidents call each other. I think President Xi Jinping made 3 major points to emphasize the cooperation. In practice, however, I feel the Chinese policy towards the United States today are still what I call strategically suspicious, economically hopeful, and practically uncertain. I feel there are powerful imperatives for cooperation between our two countries, but there are equally powerful obstacles to developing a truly cooperative relationship. So what should be done? Many scholars have argued that two sides must build up a mutual trust, but I argue that the two countries must learn how to live with each other and how to cooperate how to cooperate without trust. So I made 3 proposals here in this paper. One proposal was to reestablish an intellectual community in both the United States and China to reset the tones of bilateral relationship. I think Columbia University has a tradition and also has a good reputation in doing this. Columbia University alumni Gu Weijun, Hu Shi, Jiang Tingfu, Song Ziwen, they all got their PhDs from Columbia. They served as high-level government officials and diplomats for the KMT government in the past. Collectively, they also worked as a group to influence American policy towards China before and after the Second World War. Some of them served as the ROC, the old China's ambassador to the United States. Today, I feel the current Chinese foreign policy need to be advised, need to be reviewed, and need to be critiqued by scholars in the relevant field. For example, people call Chinese foreign policy as a warrior diplomacy. We have to consider a big question whether this has made China more attractive or more isolated. I think we need the intellectual community in China. And also intellectual community needed in the United States. We need to see scholars to have a debate on American foreign policy towards China. I see Joe Nye just published an article on, he criticized the current administration's China policy. The second proposal I made is I'm calling for a multi-layered dialogue. Not only the dialogue between the United States and China on security issues, on economic issues, on Taiwan, South China Sea, but also we need maybe a trilateral dialogue among three major powers in the Pacific region: the United States, China, and Japan. I think we need to work out binding code of conduct on sea and on air. And also the last proposal I made is I call for the two societies. We need to knitting the two societies together through more people-to-people contact and educational cultural exchanges in the post-pandemic area. And Washington has never faced a rival like Beijing. I think China cannot expect the United States to accept its authoritarian system. So at Columbia University, I truly feel that each of us should become what I call pragmatic idealists who can make individual contributions to mutual understandings. And it doesn't matter how small or how technical in nature, it will have a strategic implications in bringing back the relationship to the normal track in the future. So to conclude, I believe that strategic opportunities still exist because we need to think about the question how to govern ourselves better. This should be the top priority for both countries. So in this sense, I think the longest journey is a journey inward. So let me stop here, and I expect to have more dialogue with audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonny. That was great. I'll start it off. I have a couple of comments and then a question. So my comments are, when you spoke about the economy and the importance of it, both internally and externally, it reminded me, you quoted Deng Xiaoping. In the American version, the political advisor to Bill Clinton when he ran for president, his name is James Carville. Mm-hmm. His watchword for the campaign was, "It's the economy, stupid."
Yeah.
And, his mantra was, in politics, if the economy's good, the people will support you. And if it's not, they won't. And I think that's as true today as it was then. And I think it's true for both our presidents. If they can rev up their domestic economy, then people will be happy. And the bottom line is both our economies are inexorably tied. What's good for China is also good for the US and vice versa. So that's observation number one. Observation number two, the idea of trust, and the famous line for American politics there is when Reagan formed a peace with Russia, or then the Soviet Union, about nuclear security. And his mantra was, trust, but verify. So you should have a trustful attitude, but you should check. But I think for me, most importantly, that I'd like your opinion, it seems to me that it's in the interest of both of the presidents to have one image in the public and maybe another reality below the surface. In other words, for Biden, there are lots of political advantages to, quote, being tough on China. So that could be very appealing as a public mantra, but then privately in talks with China and Chinese businesses and American businesses, you can have a far different actual, trade agreements and the like. So what you say in the media, as a media person, you know this, right? What you say in the media and what you actually do can be very different. Do you think there's any potential there? In other words, talk tough, but collaborate privately?
I think President Biden, he visited China 4 times. First time in 1979, he was a young senator. He met Deng Xiaoping. He even asked a very interesting question. He said whether United States and China can work out a civilian station in case that Russia or Soviet Union might attack. Something the China and United States work together to deal with the former Soviet Union. The second time he visited China, I think in year 2001. I spent some time with him that year, and he visited Shanghai, Beijing, and he's very smart. He met the mayor of Shanghai. We talk a lot. He was very much impressed by what Shanghai has done. The city is so clean, this kind of thing. I think then 2011, 2013, he visited China again. He spent more hours, I think maybe a couple of days, with Vice President Xi Jinping in 2011. And when 2013, I'm not sure, but Xi Jinping already become the president. So they spent some time together. Biden was considered as old friends at that time. He also visited Taiwan one time, 2001. And so when President Bush Jr. Promised to protect Taiwan at any cost, and Biden actually, he wrote a letter to Washington Post, criticized Bush Jr. He says to defend Taiwan is one thing, but to defend independent Taiwan is another thing. So it's really, I think he himself, he understands China. And if these two leaders can meet, I think they already got the agreement to have a virtual, maybe Zoom meeting, so next month. If they can talk things out, I think that will be very, very helpful because Biden always said no leaders in the world can better understand President Xi Jinping than him. So it's really, I'm looking forward for them to meet in one-to-one, at least via Zoom, so next year, in person. They all have something we don't understand. For example, here in China, a lot of people worry about Biden's health because if you see he doesn't arrange much activities, not like President Obama. For the last 8 months, President Obama gave maybe over 100 interviews. I think President Trump also gave over 50 interviews, TV interviews, town hall meetings, these kind of things. But President Biden calculated maybe only a dozen. So people worry about his health. And here in China, we really most people are afraid to mention, if to criticize the highest level leaders, so this not allowed. so people really worry about what really happened, what's his true genuine thinking about the United States. Does he feel that he is bullied by the United States? Biden didn't treat him well, whatever, didn't see him as an equal partner, so we don't know, to be very honest. Well, this is probably a curious question we left for all of us.
Thank you, Sonny. Questions, comments? Just unmute yourself, please. And
Let me show. Yeah, go ahead.
Jeremy, you want to jump in?
Sure.
I have a picture with Biden.
Wow.
Very impressive.
Back to 20 years ago.
You look the same. He doesn't. The 20 years have been kinder to you than to him.
Hmm.
Jeremy,
you.
you were going to say something.
Yeah, I actually had a question. I mean, it's kind of related to what Bill was talking about, the economy and how the domestic side of things can shape the foreign policy side of things. I know that there's been a lot of talk about the recent crackdowns on private education and the tech companies and big companies on their monopolistic practices. Could you talk a little bit more about how that impacts foreign policy? Would you say it's, kind of in line with Wolf War diplomacy, or is it completely separate?
Yeah, I think the on this private education crackdown, I think is more related to domestic policy. Yeah, I actually supported some of the government. What I think the government's trying to reduce the burdens because you don't know how hard the Chinese kids, study. And usually before the new policy came out 2 months ago, usually a primary school students, he got up maybe 6:30 and finish 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I think he, and also he has to study science, technology, English, some of them studying French, whatever, art, so competition here is so fierce. And I think they need kids, young kids need more time to enjoy art, and also it's good for their body. So for American primary school, for example, the students get up around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and they can play for a while. Here is really if you have a kids here, a lot of parents really feel a little bit relaxed. But the problems is whether it's fair, because if you are rich enough, you can still have a chance, opportunity to invite private tutor to come to your home. So that is a question. But I don't think that's related to foreign policy, related to the anything with the United States. I think the purely domestic policy change. Big company crashing down big company, for example, Alibaba and Jinfu and some other tech companies. I think the more complicated than we can think about. For example, Alibaba, Jinfu, I think they got money from Chinese banks. So, and also real estate company here, Hengda, some other, Secretary Blinken mentioned that company in particular. I think they own maybe, I forgot, maybe 2 trillion RMB. They borrow money from the bank, not impossible for them to pay back. So this is a little bit similar to what happened in 2008. I think the differences here between the United States and China is in 2008, I think the President Obama later on, when he deal with the problem, he find those capitalists, he find those financiers. Here in China, I think the government arrested some of these business people, and so this is I do see the economic challenge here in China, and hope good luck to the government. And I don't know, because people really worry about. Every year we have about 9 million college graduates. They coming out supposed to look for a good job, but here you see these private education companies, and they already lay off a lot of people. So high-level people, and they don't have any opportunity to work in a decent field. So I think this has caused a lot of problem. People here worry about the winters coming earlier than you expected.
Thank you. Adela, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, hi, thank you for that wonderful talk. I have a question that actually has to do with the environment. I teach environmental ethics here at Columbia. And usually when people speak about China with regard to the environment, it's the coal. But I'm not going to ask you about the coal right now. I have a different question, which is this. The Belt and Road Initiative does a lot of changing to different ecosystems. And I'm just wondering, what is the process for the environmental impact statement, and can people access those? Because in the United States, it's very disputed. For example, with the Keystone Pipeline, the indigenous people and NGOs and everyone says the environmental impact statement is inadequate. It's not good. Then the Army Corps of Engineers or the Department of Interior have to rewrite it. And that process, before anything can be done, can take 2 years. But I've never seen a Belt and Road Initiative slowed down to that extent just because they had to get Tibetan ecologists and Indian ecologists and Italian ecologists on board. So my question is, what is the process for the environmental impact statement, and where are they deposited? Like, can a person access them or an NGO access them?
To be very honest, I don't know that much about this
I don't
change.
either, and I've been trying to find out.
And I think the my general impression, observation of the Belt and Road Initiative is people don't call it a strategy right now, call it an initiative. I think I always compare, so I see CSS in DC. They have a study group, maybe 10 people. They build up a data center for the Belt and Road. Maybe you can check with them. And here in China, I think we don't have a genuine expert on this topic. And if you ask who is the best expert of Kazakhstan, of the Central Asia, I cannot name them. So that's the problem. And the Belt and Road is like a big umbrella. So you put everything inside, so, but sometimes you just really very hard for us to give a discussion. So, but another response to your question is, I feel here in China, I think because the environmental ministry, the minister used to be the Tsinghua president. He became the minister a couple of years ago. He was trying to set up a nationwide surveillance system. So it's really right now, if you study domestic environmental climate policies, really tough. So last month, we see the shortage of the electricities. We see in the Shanxi province, one of the coal provinces in China, and a lot of these middle-sized, small-sized coal mines were closed. It's very hard to reopen them, because if they closed 4 or 5 years ago, and then they need to renovate to fix it before they can be reopened to produce coal. So that's because, and also another reason is China has ugly relationship with Australia. So maybe that's we cannot we buy less coal from Australia, something like that. So I think we need somebody to study this topic, whether you have a big statement, you have a good intention, but actually you don't follow, we don't know the facts, to be very honest.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's difficult to do the transboundary statements too. It's difficult to get people that speak languages about ecology together. So I understand it's complex.
Yeah, but let me add it. As a CSS, I talked to the person, and he says they use the satellite, the Google system, they use the World Bank data from different countries, and they have maybe 100 projects. They study 100 projects. For example, one of the border cities in Hermus in Xinjiang province, they study from the satellite. 5 years ago, there's nothing there. Then after 5 years, you see the buildings rise up. You see the exhibition center. You see how many trucks get across the border to Kazakhstan, I guess. So I think they are supposed to have some kind of project studying this issue. So whether the climate change, across the borders.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have time for one last one? I think Laura has her hand up.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you so much, Professor, for this talk. We're learning a lot. So my question, I work in central banking, so my question is geared more towards digital currencies and crypto. Do you have any comments or just any thoughts on crypto and regulation and US-China relations?
I think the new mayor of New York City, and he claimed that New York City should be the center of the Bitcoins. It should be center of the high technology, whatever. So I don't know. Chinese government trying to put forward the digital currency, its own digital currency, digital RMB. So I think to be personal views, I think you just cannot stop Bitcoin, and for various reasons. But how to regulate them, we don't know. The Colonial Pipeline case showed that if FBI has a power to stop payment, then supposed to be a solution. right? So I think the we need to build up international alliance system for international global regulation of the Bitcoin. So maybe FBI is supposed to be can play a major role, leading role on that.
Thank you.
You're on mute.
Very difficult topic. I think unfortunately we are out of time. Sunny, that was just fabulous. So grateful. And thank you. Get some sleep. Jeremy, you want to take it over and conclude the session?
Sure. Thank you so much, Sunny, for this amazing presentation, for answering our questions. As Bill said, I hope you have a wonderful evening and get some rest. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you. And tell people that they can have my paper on website. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sunny.
My pleasure.
Good night.